Hey guys, welcome back to more Nightmare Neighbor stories. In this video, a Karen neighbor calls the police on me just because I am disabled and I am sunbathing at my own pool on my private property. She claims people like me are disgusting and that I am illegally exposing myself. Let's dive right into the video. So I am a 31-year-old woman and I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, EDS for short. Some of you might have heard of it as being the person with stretchy skin or hyperflexibility. EDS affects my joints and connective tissue. On good days I can get around with a cane and braces on my joints. On a bad day I'm lucky to get out of bed from pain and just stuck using ice and heating pads. For a lot of people, having a neighbor like me would either be seen as totally fine or the "oh, I feel so bad, let me help her" categories. Karen though? Karen seemed to think that my disability was horrific and far too much for her to handle as a random neighbor. I live with my boyfriend who both works as an architect and is the best nurse I've probably ever had. Aside from maybe this one nurse from a time I dislocated my shoulder completely, but that's another story for another page. So we got a private backyard and in it is my favorite thing in the world. An in-ground pool and a deck. Guys, seriously, water physical therapy is great when you have joint issues, and sunbathing is just something to help my mental health and get a good amount of vitamin D into my system. Plus, it is just an awesome motivator for moving and getting out of the physical house. It was not always easy to be comfortable around people with EDS since the world can be a judgy place. With time and a lot of therapy though, I think that I've come far. I was used to odd looks or people thinking that I needed help with everything. What I wasn't used to was the type of woman that moved in next door to me. Karen was in her 50s and honestly made me think of a housewife from the books. She just did not seem to act like a real person at times, peering over the fence to watch people and learn their business. Maybe I've just been too isolated, but I didn't think real people in the world were like that. She didn't waste any time getting passive-aggressive with me and making comments. Keep in mind, all of this was taking place while I was in my own backyard and she was peering over a fence. She told me that I was brave because I was wearing a bikini outside and not caring about how I must look to other people. Okay, rude. It went further as she started to question what my disability was and then started to mock it. She told me that if she had EDS like I did, she wouldn't ever leave the house. And that I should make sure to wear clothing that hides my braces if I plan to go outside and interact with normal people. Mocking it also by laughing and shaking her wrists and ankles around. And yeah guys, it actually sounds like Karen has a great idea here. Let's tell her to apply the same standard to herself. I think she also should not ever leave the house. Also make sure to wear clothing, Karen, that hides that hideous haircut. Anyway, even going so far as to say that disabled people were disgusting and if it was up to her, she would change the rules so that we could not be outside at the same time as children. Once again, that should apply to Karen, not disabled people. Anyway, from there things ran from just being rude and kind of mocking to actively mean. At one point I was on the deck just taking in some sun, minding my own damn business, and Karen decided to speak to me from her side of the fence. Karen, you know that you shouldn't do that when people can see you, especially children who are out during the day. Me, you want me to sunbathe at night? Karen, no, I just mean that this neighborhood is not a hospital. If you're sick, then you shouldn't be around everybody else, especially half naked and showing everybody your gross body. They might start asking questions. You are out here exposing yourself to my children and I'm left explaining to them about you. Me, last time I checked, this was my private yard and I can do whatever I like. If you don't like seeing joint braces of the fact that I bruise easily, then I have a solution for you. Stop looking over the fence. Sure, I may have come off as a bit brazen, but a lifetime of a-holes can do that to you. Plus it was kind of creeping me out that she was watching me so much. Like, I know I'm good looking, Karen, but you're not my type and you're too old for me. Police had shown up on my property one day because good old Karen wanted them to check up on me. Isn't it nice to have such a kind and caring neighbor? Okay, seriously though, she called the cops on me, claiming I was exposing myself to children, implying to them that I was some kind of weird pedo that wore bathing suits to try and lure children onto my property. Karen was going on and on about how her kids were clearly terrified about me being in a bathing suit and having my braces visible. Despite it being a fake report, the police obviously had to come speak to me because those were some pretty big claims against me. I very slowly made my way to let the police come onto my property and get a better look. I explained about the pool for physical therapy and that I was totally covered up with my suit. I also noted to them that the fence was over 6 feet tall and her children would have needed a ladder, as does Karen, in order to see me. Officer: okay ma'am, I'm sorry to take up your time. Karen: hey no, arrest her, she is naked in front of my kids and scaring them with her disability. Officer: ma'am, she's in her own private backyard and is not naked. She's even in a one-piece suit. I suggest that you and your kids stay away from the fence if you don't like what you see. Karen: but she is showing her skin in public, that makes her a pedo. Officer: she is covered and on her own property, so unless you are claiming she has physically touched one of your children, there's nothing left for us to do here. Karen: you cannot do nothing. Officer: the only arrest we can make right now is for you for making a false call to the police. We are documenting it this time, and if it continues, you'll be the one in trouble. So again, I suggest you keep your eyes on your own side of the fence from now on. They left and Karen was forced to just storm off, and I wasn't dumb enough to think that it would be over. Sure, my boyfriend and I had a big laugh about it that night, but I had something in the back of my mind just gnawing at me. I knew she wanted the police to tell me to stop, and she didn't seem the type to give up when things didn't go her way. For honestly the first time in my life, I decided to take a bit of a stand against one of these ableist a-holes. I don't believe in violence or anything like that, but I do believe in being just a little bit petty to get a point across. After one day of planning and explaining to my friends, I had an entire party planned. One that involved sunbathing and snacks and being outside in swimsuits the entire afternoon. Of course, only they knew about it, and Karen was in for a big surprise. Not only did my friends show up, but they came in bright swimwear and giant obnoxious hats and everything. One person brought a speaker to play relaxing spa music loud enough for Karen to hear. Where I am, noise complaints are only after 10 PM, so it didn't take Karen long to lose any urge she had to not look over the fence. I was in the pool enjoying my party, and I could see that Karen was about to blow her top. See, when you have a disability, you tend to get along well with people who have a similar disability, so now instead of one woman with EDS, there were about 5 of us in total, all with varying degrees of aids and braces and splints. To make Karen even more mad, we even brought wheelchairs. I sometimes use a wheelchair, but I don't always need one, however. If I can make Karen mad, I might use it more often. One of my friends even said how nice it is to be a party where no ableist bigots are allowed, looking directly at Karen when she said it. It was not planned or anything to make Karen uncomfortable, it just so happens that people with disabilities meet through groups and have a lot of mutual understanding. It was not a giant thing, but it was enough that I knew it would make Karen both squirm and internally explode. During this party, my boyfriend went out for a while and he didn't want to tell me where he was going. When he came back, he told me he had a present for me and I thought he was joking around, but then he showed me and I was dying of laughter. This man literally went out and got a sign made. It didn't just say that the pool was private, but said, "Warning, may contain disabled people." It was also very clear that he was not the best sign maker, and it was more of a novelty for the party than anything else. Karen was furious though, and started yelling from her porch about the entire thing. She got the attention of a lot of neighbors who wanted to know what was going on and what her problem was. I was more than happy to tell everybody that Karen was just upset because I refused to hide indoors because I was disabled. Word spread about Karen being basically the worst person ever, and she was treated like a parasite. These people already knew me, and I liked them. I've had them help me bring in groceries or ask my boyfriend how I was feeling when I disappeared inside for days from the pain. When confronted personally, Karen was full of excuses, the newest one being that back in her day, people that were sick like me were kept inside or in hospitals. That is not good for kids to be exposed to something like that, and it's the same as letting them watch an R or X-rated movie. Nobody else held that opinion she did, and I think she realized that she was not gonna win any popularity contests with the neighbors. Karen was actually getting along okay with everybody until they found out what she did to me with calling the police. Once they saw her true stripes though, things slowly started to change around here. People were waving to her on the street less, letting their kids go over to play less, and less invites to her were going out. Eventually, it turned into full-blown ostracization. Meanwhile, I was always happy during weekends to throw parties and let neighbors come to my pool. They were always great and would bring food or music or something. Karen could only pretend not to watch from her side of the fence. I don't want to gloat or anything and say that I'm glad now everybody hates Karen and thinks she's a piece of crap. I'm just proud of myself, honestly, for standing my ground against her instead of letting her comments and actions get to me. 10 years ago, Karen would have made me want to curl inside and never leave. I haven't had issues with Karen since then, luckily, and I think it finally hit her that she has no say in what I do. She cannot get help from the police or backing from other people. She thankfully has finally stopped snooping at me from over the fence like a creeper, so that's a big positive going for me. And yeah guys, if only these Karens were as passionate about donating to charity as they are about hating disabled people, then they could have made a really big change in the world, a positive one. But the way things are going right now, they are really a burden on society. I feel so bad for Ruby in this story, but thankfully she solved the situation pretty nicely. Either way, if you enjoyed the video so far, please don't forget to like the video and give me a comment because that would help me tremendously. The next one is an amazing malicious compliance story. It starts like this. A few years ago, I worked as a tech support guy / salesperson at a small family-owned computer store in my hometown. It was not a franchise, just a local shop. The owner, a mustached, arrogant dude who could never admit when he was wrong. No matter what went wrong, it was always someone else's fault. That constant blame game was a big reason why I ended up quitting, but that's another story. At the time, my main job was delivering products to clients and doing on-site tech support at their homes or businesses. Now, for some context, my boss was obsessed with the idea that I was too slow during client visits, no matter how long I actually took. Be it 5 minutes or 2 hours, it was always too much in his eyes. He could not seem to understand that tech problems vary and can take different amount of times to fix, and of course he loved to compare us to past employees. Back when so-and-so worked here, he was way faster than you. Funny thing is, I knew that when so-and-so worked there, the boss used to say he was slow and someone else was better. That was just his thing, guilt-tripping whoever was working for him at the time. Fast forward a bit, one day he was in an extra bad mood and decided that from now on I should message him every single time I finished with a client and wait for his reply before moving on. Same thing when I arrived somewhere, message him to say I had arrived. He wanted this done through WhatsApp, SMS or even a phone call. If I didn't have credit, I was supposed to make a collect call where the person receiving the call pays. Not sure how common that is elsewhere. Basically, he didn't trust that I was working and thought I might be wasting time between clients or just riding around. Spoiler, there's not much to see. I was annoyed, but sure, whatever. Rules are rules. So, day 1, I followed the rule to the letter. Arrived at a client, message. Finished a job, message. And wait. I lost way more time waiting for responses than I ever did between jobs, but okay. Day 2, same deal. Morning went by. After lunch, I loaded up the bike with deliveries and gear and headed out. First client of the afternoon, messaged when I arrived. He replied, fixed the issue. It didn't even take 30 minutes, so I messaged when finished, no response. Waited 5 minutes, nothing, called him, no answer, waited another 5 minutes and still nothing. So I sat down on the curb under a tree and waited. Watched some videos, scrolled through Facebook, chatted with friends, and I waited and waited. Almost 3 hours passed. I just sat there doing nothing, waiting on the guy who demanded that I never move on without his go-ahead. Eventually my phone rang. Boss, where are you? Me, still at client X place. Boss, still? He was the first one this afternoon. The day's almost over. Just go back here. Me, on my way back now. I got back to the store and was greeted by him, practically foaming at the mouth. Why the hell did you take so long? You're so slow. I looked him straight in the eye. I was just following your rule. You told me to notify you every time I finished a client and wait for your reply before moving on. You didn't respond, so I waited. I would never go against your orders. He froze, just stared at me. He didn't know what to say, and then he tried to backpedal. Well, you should use common sense. If I didn't answer, it's because I was busy. Well, it turns out he had spent the whole afternoon dealing with contractors and problems at his house renovation and just completely forgot that he had given me that rule. Needless to say, that rule was never mentioned again. I went back to the old way of doing things, but of course, he still kept complaining that I took too long with clients. Some things never change. The next one is titled Worst Customer Ever. So this happened last summer. After watching ripe videos all night, I was reminded of this and thought some people might get a kick out of this. So I'm a waiter at one of the nicest restaurants in my hometown. I am pretty reasonable and always end up striking friendly conversations with my tables. I have 1.5 million stories about people who were seemingly very friendly but ended up stiffing me on my tips, but this is malicious compliance after all, so I'm gonna tell you why you should not be a dick to your server until after you receive your food. It is a beautiful day and the restaurant is on the water. Every nice day is absolutely packed. My restaurant does not take reservations of any kind ever, so people have to go in person, request a table, leave and then come back later to eat. Normally locals understand and expect this, there's no problem, but we are a tourist town. When newcomers try to get tables, there's always trouble. This is important in a second. And now I am swamped. I've had my section full for the entire day and had not had time to go on a single 5-minute break since the start of my double shift at 10 AM, and it is now around 6 PM. A couple lands at one of my tables in the corner and they are already upset because they had to wait to get a table after a new girl had tried to take a reservation for them over the phone and they had to be called back and told that they had to come in to reserve a spot. I nod to them, acknowledging that I see them after I notice them glaring daggers at me as if to say, get your butt over here now. I was dealing with a particularly crappy table at the time. Any server reading this will know the type. Every freaking time you come back they need something else. They ask for ketchup, you bring ketchup, and then once you are back they ask for refills on drinks, you run and do that, and then they need salt, and then they want to order more food, etc. Now at this point there are two things you need to understand. Number one, they had sat around waiting for a table for over an hour before being set, and number two, our restaurant has food runners. For those of you who are not familiar with this, it's a group of high school kids that for around 6% of all the tips the restaurant receives will take care of running your food to your table for you. Now, I was the only one person that treated the food runners like human beings instead of pack mules. Because of this, my food runners were very well organized and would happily help me out when I was swamped. A food runner had gone to my table, offered them water, brought them silverware, and told them I would be over shortly. So then 5 minutes later, I roll up and start my speech. Hello, my name is Gray and welcome to the restaurant. Sorry for the wait, as you can tell I'm really busy, and the man cuts me off and says, "What's your name?" He asks condescendingly. "Gray," I reply. "Gray," he starts up again. "Why is this the first time you're coming to the table? We have been here waiting for over 45 minutes. They had literally gotten there no more than 8 minutes ago and thought I had not noticed them walk in. "You're by far the worst waiter I've ever seen. You should have greeted us and walked us to our table." Another lie, as I saw the hostess do this like she does for every other person that eats here. And now I was already having a bad day and I was on my second part of a double shift that I knew would go well past midnight, so I was having none of it. This guy goes on to insult my posture, my accent, my clothing, I'm wearing a effing uniform, and a myriad of other things. At this point I am staring straight through him, not listening to a single word. Finally he says, "We want another server now. You should be fired for your incompetence." I smile, he would not have asked for that. He basically just gave me the green light to F up the rest of his evening. I am friends with everyone in the restaurant and when I have a request it can usually be handled almost instantly. But this time was gonna be different. So I walk to the hostess's table and see one of my best friends, let's call her Emma, crying under the counter. Emma is a 4'6" adorable Hispanic girl who was 20 years old at the time. She was just a tiny little thing and she needed a step stool to address people at the front desk. She had a cabinet that she could literally sit in and take naps, and she was in there crying. I gave her a big hug and asked her what was wrong. She said a couple had chewed her out for 10 minutes straight about how terrible she was, and guess who it was? My frickin' table. I asked her if she wanted some revenge and she said hell yes. I told her to take as long as she could, but apparently I was not good enough and they wanted a new table. She smiled, she knew what was gonna happen. I told my water buddy John that Emma was gonna send him a table in an hour or so and went back to work. That couple watched 3 tables sit down, order their food, eat and pay and leave before they even got to order. They sat and wanted the entire time just to try and stick it to me. The look on their faces as I happily and efficiently took care of all my tables right in front of them was priceless. Since they were not my table anymore, I did not visit them once. After they were moved, ate and left. I asked the waiter that took their table how they were, and he said they were very polite and patient with him. I think that will be the last time they treat waitstaff so horribly. And the next one is titled, "Grandma is Awful." I, 26 female at the time in 2021, have only a living paternal grandma, 90 female. Growing up I tried to bond and form any form of emotional connection, but it only caused me to not be related to her by blood. I usually would get compared to her favorite grandchildren. She would also constantly abuse me emotionally, told me constantly that I was the black sheep of the family, and told me I was not gonna succeed in life, which is why I tried to unalive myself because she motivated them most of the time. The last straw for me was when my older brother died. He was 25 male and told my grieving parents that another filthy soul out of this world, my brother, was an innocent soul that was killed off for only eating in a fast food restaurant, and I snapped at her, telling her, "The day your funeral comes, I will probably wear the brightest red dress I have in my closet because I'll never mourn your loss. On the contrary, I will celebrate when that happens." This happened in 2014. Since then, at every family event, I would avoid her or pretend she doesn't exist. Hell, I would even skip going to her birthday parties. So last November she got sick and she wanted all her children and grandkids to take care of her in the hospital, since her favorite daughter, my aunt, 52 female, and her favorite grandchildren cannot do it. She said this to my dad over the phone and I told her, "Sorry, but my grandparents died in 2K14 and 2K12, and I don't have any other grandparents since I'm not a granddaughter to my last living grandparent." She then started to cry, more like manipulate, and told me that I am her granddaughter and this could be a good moment to bond and mend our relationship. I said to her, "Now I am your granddaughter? I needed you for 26 years, but in those 26 years you broke me emotionally and I cannot since I study and work. Plus, there's no relationship to save here." I hung up for my father before she could say anything. I've been told I'm a horrible human being for what I've said to her, but I don't feel sorry at all for her. I mean, she dug her own grave, now she can go and lie in it for all I care. That is karma for you. And yeah, ripe stars, let me know in the comments what you think about this. Do you think that OP was the a-hole in this situation, or did the grandma get exactly what she deserved? Let me know in the comments. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. The HOA president in my neighborhood just hates me and I have no other way I can say or describe that. The dude just seems to hate me for no reason, while at the same time is in like a weird one-way competition with me. Like when I got a new sports car, he had one a week later from a more expensive company, then drove it up and down the block to make sure I noticed it. He wants to one-up everything that I do and I never found out a real reason for that, but I feel like it does relate back to this story. Anyway, I don't care about this guy mainly because I'm not part of his HOA, nor did I ever have a desire to join it and listen to his crappy rules. One thing to mention is that my land is kind of older than some of the other properties, and due to the lots being bigger back then, mine is like 3 times the size compared to almost everybody else living here. Even I will admit that it looks a little awkward, which is why the HOA did not like it. Anyway, he came to me a few times, not asking but demanding that I cut my property into 3 pieces and give 2 of them to the HOA. I promptly laughed in his face and told him where he could stick it, but that was far from his only complaint or suggestion that he had for me over the period of a few years actually. But I want to keep focused so this does not turn into an entire book. My trees. So due to my property being older, my trees are also some of the oldest in the neighborhood and also the biggest. Between this, the sports car talk, and the stick comment, I feel like some of you will take this kind of thing and really run away with some dirty thoughts. Anyway, now that I'm reading it back, him feeling insecure about himself could also contribute to a lot of the things he has done. Back to my trees though. The HOA president hated them and complained about them existing more than anything else he spoke to me about, and each time he had some different reason why the trees needed to be removed, and each time I had to remind him that I was not part of the HOA and I did not need to listen to anything that he said. HOA guy: "They look so weird being bigger than the other trees." Me: "I cannot control how tall trees are." HOA: "Oh, and what if we have a big storm and they fall and damage somebody's house?" Me: "That's exactly the point of insurance." HOA: "You have too many trees. There must be some kind of limit." Me: "Yeah, you go and find me a law saying that there's a tree limit on private properties. As if the trees were not here before any of you." HOA: "The HOA bylaws state this and that." Me: "Then it's a good thing I'm not in the HOA." Those were just some brief back and forth conversations I've had with him as he tried to convince me to get rid of my trees, but to no avail. Unless the tree was actively dead, there was nothing that was gonna sway my decision and make me get rid of the trees. I personally like the idea of these giant trees towering over us and showing how amazing nature can be, and after 200 years something is still standing. For all I know, somebody of historical importance has looked at that same tree before. He finally figured out that talking to me was not gonna work and his HOA threats could not work on me. Since he used his position like a loaded gun, scaring people into doing what he wanted them to, I'm sure he stopped many people from doing things not even against the HOA rules, but just because he went up to their homes and scared them with the threat of fines. Because that is what we all want in a good community leader, right? Somebody that scares and makes us feel uncomfortable. One day when I was not home, he managed to get a company to come out and remove the tree that he wanted gone from my property. Now, getting rid of a 140-foot oak tree is no easy task, and it was clear this company was not up for the job but decided to do it anyway. Now, he will swear up and down later that it was just this one tree he wanted removed, but I feel like if it succeeded, he was gonna get more done. Now, the company was under some crap assumption that it was HOA land, since my house was not that close to it, and again, my land was bigger than everybody else's. So they cut the tree down but made two major mistakes during the process. The first one was not making sure the tree fell in the right direction, and instead it knocked over another tree. Then they decided, instead of grinding down a stump like most people do it, they ripped out the roots and all, not paying attention to the fact that the roots were also huge and gonna create a massive hole. And to make things even worse, the roots were tangled or connected or something to the roots of another tree, which got so uprooted that they removed it as well because it was not stable and probably was not gonna live at that point. When I found out what was going on when I got home, I was furious. It was around the time they were almost done with their third tree. I started screaming at the company and at the HOA president, who was hanging out there the entire time and probably enjoying every single minute of it. My beautiful trees were now gone and there was a giant hole in my yard, and this man was 100% responsible for it in my eyes. I called the police, who told me that I could have them trespassed from my property, but as far as getting the money back, that was going to have to be a personal lawsuit. One that I was eager to get started, and the lawyer I found, who specialized in tree law, felt like I had a lot of money coming my way for it. Despite the trees being gone due to technology and old street cam views and stuff, an arborist was able to actually estimate what the trees were worth and what I could sue for. Each of those oak trees was worth between $100,000 and $200,000 due to their age and size and other things that I don't really understand. On their own, that sounds like a big payday, but I learned a lot about trees and stuff from this experience, and usually in law, if somebody breaks or steals something, they are forced to replace it. The thing is that you cannot just replace those trees, because you cannot just go out and buy an old oak tree from the store. Sure, you can buy an oak tree and plant it, but it just would not be the same. When items cannot be replaced, courts like to make the guilty party pay treble damages. If you're like me and did not know what that means, it basically means triple the worth of those trees. So this was now a huge expensive lawsuit, and the HOA were beyond scared about the fact that I wasn't gonna nail them. The thing is that I knew they did not have that kind of money, so my lawyer actually had me move that big money lawsuit onto the tree company itself because the damage was caused by them and they did not have a right to remove trees that belonged to me. I read so many stories here where companies get off, and I need you all to know that even if the HOA lied to them, they are still liable for this. Sue them too. The company clearly did not want to have a bigger lawsuit on their hands or for anybody to dig more into what they were doing, and they were willing to give me that huge 7-figure sum settlement, $1 million, and for them I was more than happy to do that. But I was not done with the HOA president because I still had a lawsuit in me and was aiming for the HOA for that one. The HOA president had trespassed on my land, forged fake documents showing the land was HOA property, and knowingly had my property destroyed. Now, I knew that he was a jerk, but I did not think he was a stupid man until I heard the defense he gave in court for what he did and why he should not get into trouble for it. HOA, what happened was an accident and the company rightfully settled. But for my end, there was no wrongdoing. The HOA has the right clearly stated in our bylaws to remove any tree that is a danger to the homeowners. I had asked him several times to remove it of his own free will, but he refused to do it. I was left with no choice but to pay the company using HOA funds to remove the trees. If anything, he owes the HOA the money we spent in order to get the tree removal company to do the work. There was just so much wrong with this statement to unpack, and I couldn't believe this was the best defense he came up with. Taking away all the extra flair and dramatics, not to mention him trying to turn himself into the victim, and you are left with just one point. My trees were against the rules of the HOA, an HOA that I'm not a member of, and he was fighting over the fact of me being a member or not. He really felt that it didn't matter if I was a member or not, because his rules should just apply to everyone, and the fact that he basically admitted to what he did opened a whole different can of worms. In my state, in order to get a tree removed, you need documents from the town. Usually to get these, you need an inspector to see the state of the tree, and if you're claiming it's a danger, then they have to agree on that. He did not get any of the paperwork or permits in order to legally get my tree removed. He literally admitted to breaking the law trying to build his own defense. Hence, he was now an idiot in my mind, and also his lawyer for not stopping that in advance from happening. 2 court cases and 2 big wins for me made me really feel a little better about the trees being gone. The HOA president was now facing legal charges and had to step down from the HOA in order to deal with that. I had more than enough money to fix my yard now, plant new trees that one day will grow tall, and a big fat savings account for a rainy day. I know that sometimes the HOA wins, but when they manage to get screwed over, it is nice to tell everybody and show them that an HOA is not invincible. And before we end the video, we will read one last story from r/petty revenge. It is titled Cheating Spouse. So this is the petty revenge story of a friend of mine. When she found out her partner was cheating, she put an AirTag in his car and would schedule deliveries for shopping from Uber Eats whenever he was alone with his mistress to disturb their fun. She would play dumb, saying she had ordered odd bits for dinner and had forgotten to say when her partner would quiz her about it later. She did this for a couple of weeks until she had enough money to leave, but put itching powder all over the bed, loosened the water overflow in the washing machine so it would leak, and put ants in his underwear drawer with sugar water just before she left him. I don't see her as often now because she moved 100 miles away, but I never want to get on her bad side. As for her partner, he supposedly had to move to a smaller house, but I have not seen him since, and my friend blocked him on everything. My friend does now have a wonderful new fiance and baby on the way, so at least things worked out for her. And someone in the comments said, years ago, I knew a girl that rubbed fiberglass insulation all over her husband's underwear. I heard first person that it was very bad. And yeah guys, thank you for watching. If you cannot get enough of my stories, please check out my playlist on the left, and I will see you again tomorrow.